With that detour into the theories about the four kingdoms over, we should now have a picture of the kind of circumstances into which the Antichrist will come to power. Let's turn back to Revelation now, where John gives us some more details.
I saw that one of the heads of the beast seemed wounded beyond recovery, but the fatal wound was healed. The whole world marveled at this miracle and gave allegiance to the beast. They worshipped the dragon for giving the beast such power, and they also worshipped the beast. Who is as great as the beast? They exclaimed. Who is able to fight against him? The Antichrist will mimic Jesus by appearing to suffer a fatal wound and then being healed. This trick resurrection is going to cause the world to marvel at his apparent supernatural powers of recovery. They will pledge allegiance to him and by proxy pledge allegiance to Satan, the one empowering him.
This event will add to the Antichrist's air of invincibility, and the whole world will exclaim, "Who is able to fight against him?"
Remember, the Assyrian held a similarly high view of himself, boasting, "No one can even flap a wing against me or utter a peep of protest." So when the whole world unites under him, even the nations who don't particularly like him will have no strength to fight against him. His position will be unassailable. Then the beast was allowed to speak great blasphemies against God, and he was given authority to do whatever he wanted for 42 months. And he spoke terrible words of blasphemy against God, slandering his name and his dwelling, that is, those who dwell in heaven. And the beast was allowed to wage war against God's holy people and to conquer them, and he was given authority to rule over every tribe and people and language and nation. And all the people who belong to this world worship the beast. They are the ones whose names were not written in the book of life before the world was made, the book that belongs to the Lamb who was slaughtered. Anyone with ears to hear should listen and understand. Anyone who is destined for prison will be taken to prison. Anyone who is destined to die by the sword will die by the sword. This means that God's holy people must endure persecution patiently and remain faithful. Here we are told again that the Antichrist will be given authority to do whatever he wanted for 42 months. Unfortunately, whatever he wants will be to crush Jerusalem and anyone who turns to God. It's Jacob's trouble again. This is all centered around Jacob's trouble. This passage also confirms that his dominion will be worldwide. He will rule over every tribe and people and language and nation. It will truly be a global empire. Remember what happened when Jesus was being tempted in the wilderness. Next, the devil took Jesus to the peak of a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. "I will give it all to you," he said, "if you will kneel down and worship me."
Jesus, the Christ, turned Satan down, but this man, the Antichrist, will not. He will become the ruler of all the kingdoms of the world. He's basically driven by selfish ambition, a trait which can be seen in many of our political leaders today, and he has a special hatred for God's most precious possession, Jerusalem.
During this time, the Antichrist will blaspheme God and even set himself up as God. I find it interesting that he will also speak against all those who dwell in heaven too. Clearly Satan is still sore about his recent defeat at their hands, and with his pride bruised, is slandering his conquerors at every opportunity.
You'll often hear people speculating about the exact identity of the Antichrist today. In fact, throughout history, it's almost been a pastime for Christians to speculate on the exact identity of the Antichrist. And again, because people tend to view prophecy through the lens of current events, almost every unpopular political or religious leader for centuries has been touted as a potential candidate.
As this series is being made in 2014, Barack Obama is doing incredibly unpopular things in the United States, and so the latest fad is to pin the tag on him. But before him, Bill Clinton was tagged as the Antichrist. In fact, most Democrat presidents are given the title at some point. Henry Kissinger had it for a while. Mikhail Gorbachev did too. Hitler and Stalin were obvious candidates. Napoleon, Bill Gates, Prince Charles, Prince William, Jacques Chirac. The list is almost endless.
We have to lift ourselves above the clamour and sensationalistic noise and become a little more far-sighted than that.
Barack Obama is a bad president, to be sure. There may even be good cause to call him an Antichrist by the biblical definition as one who denies the Son, but he is not the Antichrist, just as Clinton and Kissinger and the rest weren't. We can't keep crying wolf every time an unpopular leader comes along like this, because it discredits the truth that the Antichrist is coming. A similar thing happens when people try to set dates for Jesus Christ's return. When the date comes and goes without incident, it discredits the truth that Jesus Christ is coming.
God has clearly set out the circumstances under which the Antichrist will arise, and we know that those circumstances have not yet arrived.
We don't have a truly global system of governance yet. We're getting there slowly, but not yet. The third temple hasn't been built yet either, or even commissioned.
Indeed, a lot of prophecy needs to find fulfillment before we'll know who he is.
Yes, many little antichrists will come before that point, and already many of them have come and gone. Adolf Hitler was probably the closest to the end-time Antichrist that we've seen so far. We'll see many more in the future too, but quite scarily, none of them compare to the one to come, the one who is the embodiment of Satan himself. During the Antichrist's 42-month reign, when his power and authority will be absolute, God will expect his followers to persevere once again, saying, "Anyone who is destined for prison will be taken to prison. Anyone destined to die by the sword will die by the sword." This means that God's holy people must endure persecution patiently and remain faithful. So again we see that God won't necessarily spare all his followers this persecution. Some people are destined to suffer and die for him. The 144,000 are safe in the wilderness, but those who are left behind will have to count the cost. Dietrich Bonhoeffer once said that when Christ calls a man, he bids him come and die. This is clearly a message that we get from Revelation. God is looking for men and women who did not love their lives so much that they were afraid to die.
When Jesus told us that godless people would do to us what they had done to him, we must take that promise seriously. Many will be forced to walk that road behind their Saviour and die just as he died, at the hands of their enemies.
However, the Bible reminds us that to retain the faith even in the face of that prospect is to be considered victorious in God's eyes, and there will be great rewards for such bravery. If you cling to your life, you will lose it, but if you let your life go, you will save it.
The Antichrist has another beside him who helps to consolidate his authority, a false prophet. He is described as coming up out of the earth.
Then I saw another beast come up out of the earth. He had 2 horns like those of a lamb, but he spoke with the voice of a dragon. He exercised all the authority of the first beast, and he required all the earth and its people to worship the first beast, whose fatal wound had been healed. He did astounding miracles, even making fire flash down to earth from the sky while everyone was watching. And with all the miracles he was allowed to perform on behalf of the first beast, he deceived all the people who belonged to this world. He ordered the people to make a great statue of the first beast, who was fatally wounded and then came back to life. He was then permitted to give life to the statue so that it could speak. Then the statue of the beast commanded that anyone refusing to worship it must die.
If the Antichrist will be controlled directly by Satan, then I believe that this false prophet will be directly controlled by Abaddon, the destroyer.
Here, the false prophet is described as the beast that comes out of the earth, and we know that Abaddon was the evil spirit who came out of the earth, the bottomless pit. Furthermore, you'll remember that the 2 witnesses are going to be killed by the beast from the bottomless pit, so we know that Abaddon will be prominent and full of authority during this time of Jacob's trouble. That's why I believe the 2 witnesses will actually be killed by the false prophet under Abaddon's control, or even possession.
The false prophet generally acts as a right-hand man to the Antichrist. He consolidates the Antichrist's authority, directs people to worship the Antichrist, and he himself operates with all the authority of the Antichrist.
The Bible tells us that he will have the outward appearance of a lamb, in other words, the appearance of Christ, but he will speak with the mouth of the dragon, who is Satan. Appearances will definitely be deceiving. One of his most significant acts will be to make a great statue of the first beast. This idol of the Antichrist is the abomination of desolation, or the sacrilegious object that causes desecration, that will be set up in the rebuilt temple. He will command everyone to worship it or die. And remember, the establishing of this idol will mark the beginning of the final 42 months of his reign. Jesus said, "The day is coming when you'll see what Daniel the prophet spoke about, the sacrilegious object that causes desecration, standing in the holy place. Reader, pay attention. Then those in Judea must flee to the hills. A person out on the deck of a roof must not go down into the house to pack. A person out in the field must not return, even to get a coat. How terrible it will be for pregnant women and for nursing mothers in those days, and pray that your flight will not be in winter or on the Sabbath. For there will be greater anguish than at any time since the world began, and it will never be so great again. In fact, unless that time of calamity is shortened, not a single person will survive, but it will be shortened for the sake of God's chosen ones. Then, if anyone tells you, 'Look, here is the Messiah,' or 'There he is,' don't believe it. For false messiahs and false prophets will rise up and perform great signs and wonders so as to deceive, if possible, even God's chosen ones. See, I have warned you about this ahead of time." Notice how Jesus says that if anyone comes along during this time claiming to be a Messiah or a prophet, not to believe them. This is because it's exactly during this time that the Antichrist will come along claiming to be a Messiah, and it will be during this time that the false prophet establishes the abomination of desolation on Temple Mount. Jesus is telling us not to get involved with these two people.
The false prophet will be able to back up his claims with miracles, and this will be a strong delusion for many.
He will even be able to make fire flash down to earth from the sky while everyone was watching. In this way, he will mimic Jesus, who was able to command the natural elements when the storm came upon the Sea of Galilee. Remember, Satan is able to perform miracles too. Supernatural signs and wonders are not automatic proof of godliness, and indeed, lying signs and wonders will be on the increase in the years to come. A final interesting point to make about the false prophet from this passage is that he will have the power to give life to this statue so that it could speak.
How will he be able to animate the idolatrous abomination of desolation in such a way that it can speak? Again, this will become increasingly clear as we move closer to the time.
Imagine if I told my great-grandmother living in the 19th century that the whole world would be able to simultaneously watch live sporting events happening on another continent through an electronic screen in the living room, or that scientists would be able to clone animals, or that we would be able to send electronic mail from one part of the globe to another in the blink of an eye using a device that can fit in our pocket, or that we can genetically modify plants. Her mind would have been blown at the thought. In a world of horse-drawn carriages, such things would have been inconceivable, beyond her wildest imagination.
In a similar way, although technological advances are starting to give us an idea of how inanimate objects might be given life, I believe that there will be still further quantum leaps forward in the fields of biotechnology and cybernetics. There are things just ahead which are just as inconceivable to us right now as our advancements would seem to our great-grandparents. But those breakthroughs may not be quite as far ahead as we think. Indeed, the rate at which scientific breakthroughs are coming, the rate at which knowledge is increasing, is one of the most significant and striking hallmarks of our era. And this fits with what Daniel was told about the end-time kingdom too.
But you, Daniel, keep this prophecy a secret. Seal up the book until the time of the end, when many will rush here and there, and knowledge will increase. The Greek word for knowledge is science. He is being told that life would become increasingly fast-paced and full of scientific breakthroughs. Certainly this prophecy is coming true in the world today.
The false prophet's ability to animate an idol will mimic God as the creator of life. And although we can't say for certain how he will do that right now, when it happens, it will be simply unmistakable. A giant idol of a global leader which is capable of speech amidst a ruined Israel under a one-world government is going to be front-page news. Again, God hasn't left us without blatantly obvious signs.
What's interesting about Daniel's prophecy of Jacob's trouble is that he is the only one to point to a period after the 1,260 days, and it's measured from the moment the abomination of desolation is set up. Daniel is told, from the time the daily sacrifice is stopped and the sacrilegious object that causes desecration is set up to be worshipped, there will be 1,290 days, and blessed are those who wait and remain until the end of the 1,335 days. So the establishing of this idol is an important time marker. We already know that from the moment it is set up, the Antichrist will reign unchallenged for 1,260 days. But here, Daniel is told that there will be another 30 days, or 1 month, of life on earth beyond that reign, and then another month and a half, or 45 days, beyond that, making 1,335 days in total. We'll get to the significance of the final 75 days, or 2.5 months, later, but for now, the Bible isn't quite finished telling us about the Antichrist, the false prophet, and Jacob's trouble.
Next, it tells us about the economic system that will be in place during this time.